Thank you to the Decoding Nature sponsors, Five Rivers MetroParks Foundation, Cox Arboretum Foundation, Wagner Subaru, and Wegersen Gardens Foundation. Decoding Nature is on a mission to discover the story of how Five Rivers MetroParks came to be, having more than 16,000 acres of land that inspire personal connections with nature. We head to Deeds Point, where there's a historical 1913 flood marker. I have but one question for Becky Benet, the Executive Director of Five Rivers MetroParks, to kick off our journey. So Becky, where does the story of Five Rivers MetroParks begin?
Well, it actually began over 100 years ago. As you know, the flood of 1913 really caused a lot of damage, and people started to not only recognize that, of course, but the damage it was providing to open space and our rivers. And in 1917, the Ohio legislature passed some legislation to create special park districts, and Five Rivers MetroParks is one of those special park districts.
Now let's go back in time before the special park districts were established to get a feel for what happened historically around the time of the 1913 flood. Who better to tell the story than Brady Kress from Dayton History?
Brady, I can't believe I am on top of the Carillon Tower.
Yeah, welcome.
This is amazing.
Yeah, this fun?
This is a lot of fun.
We're about 100 feet up.
Yeah.
It's a great view of the new route of the Great Miami River, but also the old route. And so a lot of folks, they know or they've heard of Old River Park, which was NCR's employee park. It was built when Colonel Deeds, Edward Deeds, was CEO and chairman of the board of NCR. That is the old oxbow of the Old River, and it split. The river split into numerous pieces just this side of the Stewart Street Bridge. And so what you have is the Carillon, a tribute to Deeds, and his work with the Conservancy District is really on display here. The dams, the levees, and the reuse of property that was somewhat abandoned when the Conservancy District straightened the river and made this nice little artificial curve that scoots past Carillon Park here.
I was never aware of that. It was called Old River. Okay.
Yeah.
Really was, because the Old River was there.
That was the Old River.
Yeah. So Deeds must have faced other challenges.
So as you get past the flood itself and you get into building the dams and levees, he's really, by the time the legislation is proposed, of course, it means that we're purposely going to build some dams and flood occasionally farms north of town. He had a lot of opposition, but Deeds, was a corporate leader. By that time, he and Charles Kettering had formed Delco, Dayton Engineering Laboratories Company. Yeah. He was, one of the chiefs at NCR. He wasn't somebody you're going to push around.
Right.
He was a good, here's this quarterback of the Denison University football team, graduate, so he says, look, because he was getting death threats, and he said, I want the names, I need to go out and talk to people about the benefits of this program. He said, the people that threaten my life, I want to talk to them first. I want their names and addresses. And so Deeds is knocking on their doors. He's walking up onto their porches. People that actually said, if Deeds ever shows up here, I'm going to shoot him.
Yeah.
And those are the people he starts with. And he goes up there and he's able to convince every single one of them that this is a great deal. And they believe him, and in a way, it protects Dayton to this day. So that happens. By the time Deeds is ready to build this thing, and he becomes the chairman of the Conservancy District. He's the longest serving board chair of the district to date. So by the time they get set to build these things, the U.S. government says, well, that's nice, you want to build some dams.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to buy any new equipment. You're not allowed to hire any contractors. We need all this for the war effort. So again, he has this hurdle to jump, and Deeds says, okay, well, we're going to find all the surplus equipment we can. We're going to hire all these, we're not going to hire contractors, we'll hire all these people individually, we'll build our own little towns to build the dams. And he goes about it. And this project, at the end of the day, comes in ahead of schedule, under budget. And again, it served us well for 100 years.
You know, the Miami Conservancy District, all the steps that went into place to make that happen, we wouldn't have the Five Rivers MetroParks we have without the history that MCD brought. It's, you know, this has been great.
Yeah, it set the stage. It set the stage. And I think a lot of people, you know, that see so many of those different features, including Deeds Caroline.
Yeah.
Who is Deeds? A pretty important guy.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad you could join us up here. This is fun.
Me too. Now we're gonna figure out how to get down.
It's time to connect some dots between the 1913 flood, the Miami Conservancy District, and the flood protection system. Janet Bly with Miami Conservancy District is meeting us in Germantown, Ohio, home to one of the 5 dams and a Five Rivers MetroPark.
You've probably heard about the 1913 flood.
Yeah, you can't be a Daytonian and not
Right?
hear about it.
Horrible natural disaster.
Right.
Hundreds of people were killed. There were thousands left homeless. We had roads and bridges and buildings that were swept from their foundations and swept away by floodwaters. And in the aftermath of that, the community rallied and came together. They raised money and they hired this brilliant engineer, Arthur Morgan, out of Memphis, Tennessee. And they hired him to find a solution so that we wouldn't experience flooding like that again. So the system that Morgan designed is these 5 dams and 55 miles of levee and a whole bunch of other stuff, but that's really the most important parts of it. So here we are at Germantown, one of the 5 dams. We have Germantown, Englewood, Lockington, Taylorsville, and Huffman.
The creation of this dam, I bet there are some really interesting facts about it. Is there something that we can decode? Can you give us a bit more detail on the construction of the dam?
So yeah, this part is all an earthen embankment. Here we have a concrete section that are called conduits, and there's tubes that go through the dam and the water rushes through there. And behind the dam is a retarding basin. We don't have a lake on a regular basis, but that area is thousands of acres of land that's preserved to store floodwaters when needed. A lot of innovation went into designing these dams, and those innovations are used throughout flood control systems in the world still today. So at each dam there was a camp, and this area that you can see here was full of cottages and bunkhouses, had a school. About 200 people lived right here. Families lived with them. During 1918, they had a flu pandemic right here in this village.
Yeah.
The building there, which is our current maintenance garage, that was the mess hall for the camp. When they were building the dams, they brought in a forester. His name is J.W. Calland. He had worked for the U.S. Forestry Service, and MCD hired him. And he identified the mature timber that could be used for construction. They used some of it to create the forms to build the concrete, to build the houses. They sold some of it to war industries, remember World War I, and there were factories that needed wood. And then he also identified where reforestation could occur, where to plant new trees, right. And what trees to plant.
Right.
And so there's still beautiful trees in the park today that was part of that effort to keep good trees and plant new ones. We have found that Germantown MetroPark offers shade to the stream. And so Twin Creek is one of the most ecologically diverse and healthy streams in all of Ohio.
So we know that 4 of the dams are now a part of the Five Rivers MetroParks, but obviously it started with the Miami Conservancy District. So when did that transition take place? How does that work?
Right, so it happened in the 1960s when MetroParks was formed. It was originally the Dayton-Montgomery County Park District. MCD built the dams in the 19-teens, 1920s, and the land behind it was reserved as parks at the time. In fact, in the 30s, the federal programs, the CCC and WPA came in and they built picnic areas. But we weren't really a park management agency, and when MetroParks was formed, it created this perfect partnership. So they managed the park part, and we maintained the dam.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate all this education. It's amazing to me. Who knew all this could come from the flood? So many good, positive things.
Yeah, so Arthur Morgan, designed the dam to protect the communities from flooding, and he called the parks a happy byproduct.
What an amazing story of resiliency after the flood. On the next episode of Decoding Nature, we'll learn about a grassroots movement that kept the momentum of conservation going. Until next time, get outside and explore your Five Rivers MetroParks.